Ooh. Okay, so I'm going to start the countdown. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome everyone to today's virtual overview of Scrutiny Committee hosted by Bassetlaw District Council. Given the current challenging situation we all face following the outbreak of COVID-19, new legislation has been approved that enables councils to host virtual meetings rather than requiring members to be present in the committee chamber when making a decision. This keeps everyone safe by maintaining a social distancing etiquette and allows business to be conducted in an appropriate manner. It's very important that councillors can hear each other, so I'll invite members in alphabetical order to confirm their attendance and to test their broadband connection. So I'll start with Councillor Jack Bowker. I think maybe not here, but...
Yes, he sent his apologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robin Carrington-Wild.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor David Challoner.
Present, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Councillor Anne Coulthate.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Deborah Merriweather.
Present, Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. Councillor James Naish.
Yeah, present, John.
Thanks, James. Councillor Claire Plevin.
Present, John.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor David Presley.
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Thank you, David. Councillor Madeline Richardson.
Present, Chair.
Thank you, Maddie. And myself, John Shepherd, as Chair. Councillor Helen Tamblin-Saville.
Present, Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Helen. And Councillor Mark Watson.
Present, Chair.
Thank you, everyone. Perhaps later in attendance, we might have Councillor Julia Lee, Cabinet Member for Neighbourhoods, who I think is going to join us after 7 o'clock. She has a prior commitment. And we've also got council officers here. Ellen Hinsley.
Present, Chair.
As meeting facilitator. Thank you, Ellen. And Linda Dorr, Committee Clerk.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And Stephen Brown, Head of Corporate Services.
Present, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Richard Gadsby, Policy and Scrutiny Officer.
Present, Chair.
Thanks, Richard. And Liz Whittles, Policy and Scrutiny Officer.
Present, Chair.
Thanks, Liz. Also in attendance, Craig Taylor, Head of Neighbourhoods.
Yes, I'm present, Chair.
And I believe that's it for officers and members.
Councillor Shepherd, just to add that you might just want to do a sound check for Councillor Fielding.
Okay, yeah, Councillor Sybil Fielding is subbing for Councillor Bowker, I believe.
That's correct.
Hi, Sybil, are you there?
Yeah, present, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks, Sybil. If members lose connection and the meeting was to become inquirate or the live streaming for public viewing fails, I shall adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes to allow connection to be re-established. Given this is a virtual meeting, there's no corporate responsibility to detail a fire procedure as we ordinarily would. However, I'd like to highlight that this committee is live streamed on social media, so all participants, please be aware of your actions and take appropriate safety precautions from your place of live streaming. And can I remind members to switch off their microphones when not speaking. Agenda item number 1 is apologies. Linda, you've got apologies.
Yes, Councillor Shepherd, yes, just to confirm that we have apologies this evening from Councillor Jack Bowker and Councillor Sybil Fielding as a sub. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Agenda item 2 is to receive declarations of interest by members and by officers.
Chair, just to confirm that I haven't received any declarations of interest from either members or officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I'll assume there aren't any then. If during the meeting a member realises that they have an interest, then please disclose this as soon as possible. Agenda item 3 is minutes of the meeting held on 21st of July 2020 on pages 5 to 11 of your agenda. In regard to minute number 141E at the bottom of page 7, members noted the recognition of BDC in achieving the 4th best in the country for public sector accessibility requirements and gave thanks to the officers who helped to make that happen. It is with great sadness that one of the officers involved, Philip Mitchell, passed away in July. Our thoughts are with his family and friends. Just going back to the beginning of the minutes, have we got any comments or questions from members on page 5? Or page 6? Page 7? Page 8? And page 9? Thank you. Is any member not in favour of the minutes? The minutes are therefore approved. Thank you very much. And agenda item 4 is the minutes for action and implementation list on page 13 to 14. I do apologise. I didn't go through all the pages, did I, of the minutes? But I'm sure someone will shout up if they're not happy. So it's page 9, 10 and 11 I missed out when I read out the numbers. Everybody's okay with that. Thank you. So agenda item 4, page 13, minutes for action and implementation. Are there any questions from members? Agenda item 5, outstanding minutes list, page 15 of your agenda. Are there any questions from members?
Chair.
David, I thought you might have a question.
Well, it's not requesting it. What are we going to do about EMAS? Because we're going to have virtual meetings for a long time. Let's invite them to one of the virtual meetings and put their as far where they are with the response. It will help with COVID as well, Chair, as to what response they've given to that.
Well, it would certainly be interesting to hear how they've responded to the crisis and so on. The view which we previously taken is that we didn't want to put any extra pressure or on them. Obviously, they were very busy, particularly a few months ago, and therefore we weren't going to press them on this item. They had given us originally a written update, I believe, back in March. It all depends on what the members want to do. Can I just ask the officers if they got any comments on this?
Obviously, yes, Chair. I mean, we can ask EMAS to attend a future meeting. We can probably pencil something in if the committee's happy to. But obviously, that's subject to EMAS being available, etc. So we can get something penciled in, and I can certainly make contact with EMAS if that's what the committee would like me to do.
Is that the feeling of members generally? Does anybody else want to comment on that?
Well, I'd support that, Chairman. I'd put
Yes.
it forward.
Yes.
Because, as I said, we never know going to meet. We don't know if we start meeting properly, so it might be virtual for a long time. They can send us a paper. We can have a look at it, and then we can send questions to them as well.
I think I agree with that, David. So in the first instance, at least a written response, if they're not able to attend. And can I suggest then to members that Richard should contact them with a view to arranging a response to a future meeting to put it on the agenda. So either
John,
a written response or in person, and look at our work programme, see where that might be slotted in. Yes. That's assuming things don't get a lot worse in terms of COVID.
John,
Councillor Richardson,
yeah, it's just that I think sometimes if we don't get some report or something going, it'll go on too long.
Yes.
Then we're back in the winter time where we usually ask for a winter report. So I think if from EMAS we get short reports, so they're not bogged down with anything hefty, even if they can't even attend a meeting virtually, then at least we've got some contact. I think it's important we keep in contact with them so that they know we're supporting them, but we still need the information.
I think that's a very good point, and I think Richard might word it in those sort of ways, Richard, in terms of very much a supportive, constructive relationship we've got with them. And I think it's also true, if you don't have a date in the diary, then it can just sort of drift on and on a bit, perhaps, as that view. So is that okay, Richard?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make contact with them this week and see what they come back with, and then let the committee know what sort of time scale that they can attend committee.
Thank you very much for that. And just also on that item, we've got the evaluation of the Stepping Stones project, but that will be covered by the annual review of the Community Safety Partnership, won't it, in presumably February. Okay, there's no more questions. We'll move on, but before we do the forward plan, I'd like to bring forward item 10E to accommodate our speakers. We've got the update on the action plan arising from the scrutiny review on pages 75 to 18.9 on waste and recycling. And Liz Whittles, Policy and Scrutiny Officer, will briefly outline the objectives of the review and the monitoring process. And Craig Taylor, Head of Neighbourhoods, will provide details and answer any questions. And we may be joined by Councillor Lee, Cabinet Member for Neighbourhoods. So over to Liz.
Okay, the review is an update of the Task and Finish group that was held from September 2018 to January 2019. The report outlines the background to the review, which focused on improving Bassetlaw's recycling rate and reducing waste. It outlines the work that the working groups did, who met on 4 times, and the key 7 areas of concern. Following this, it produced 12 recommendations, which went to Cabinet. The one on the recycling wheel did not receive, was not endorsed by Cabinet. From section 3.4 on, it outlines what has happened to our waste and recycling rates since the review. Historically, Bassetlaw has had low recycling rates, and during the time since the review, very little has changed. The tables show the 4 key PIs from September 2018 to March 2020. However, it should be noted that the recycling rate nationally has fallen. but Bassetlaw has not made any headway. The Q1 performance for this year is still not available. I checked this morning. So the last figures that have actually been reported in the performance reports are to Q4. One success is the garden waste collection service. Since it was introduced in March 2017, it has increased subscribers and tonnage. And this year, even with COVID, it has increased the subscriptions and the amount of waste collected. And Bassetlaw actually continued to collect throughout the pandemic, unlike other authorities in Nottinghamshire and across the country. Something that will impact on waste and recycling is the Environment Bill, which is currently working its way through Parliament. It's had its second reading now, and the proposals are to be introduced from 2023, which will mandate what councils will have to recycle. It will also look at the producers as well, asking people who produce packaging to look at their requirements. So it's a two-pronged attack. On the 19th of August, the government published the targets that it would have, its environmental targets, and it will be consulting in 2022 to be in place by October 2022. So perhaps that is something that could come back to the committee then. Also, during that time, we've introduced a new council plan where we've got the green agenda as a key objective of the council. And there have also been significant changes to the service itself. We now have a new head of service, a new head of neighbourhoods. There have been senior management changes, and of course the Environment Services has had to work with the impact of COVID-19 on its service delivery. As a result of that, there has not been as much progress perhaps as we would have liked, and the new head of neighbourhoods has suggested that the monitoring period be extended to March 2022. Normally, reviews are only monitored for 12 months after review, but if the circumstances dictate, then it can be extended. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Now I'm going to throw this open to members for their questions and comments.
Chairman.
Oh, sorry, Craig. Should I just let Craig come in first?
Yeah, just on the brown bins, Chairman. If you've got a brown bin, is that an interest?
I wouldn't have thought so, but okay.
Just asking.
Yeah, all right. Craig, can I ask you to
yes, if I could just come in on a few points. That was a very succinct and informative update by Liz there. Just wanted to perhaps point out a couple of things in terms of the 4 performance indicators on page 77. As was mentioned, there's been no improvement in 3 of those indicators, and only a marginal improvement on the other one. In terms of the first table, that shows residual waste. So this is on page 77. Shows the residual waste per household, and it shows that has increased from 617 up to 631 kilograms. However, the previous 5 years were all higher than the 1920 figure as well, and 2017-18 was as high as 670 kilograms. So I'm just pointing that out because the summer of 2018 was, and the report mentions, a very dry summer, which would have impacted on the amount of garden waste produced, which then subsequently may not have made its way into the residual waste bins at that point, if not many people, or not as many people, had the garden waste bins at that point. Similarly, on a couple of the other indicators as well, the 2018-19 is a slight anomaly. So for example, the percentage of households, so the second table, percentage of household waste sent for reuse, recycling and composting, that was making steady progress. So from 2014 and 15 onwards, that went from 19.2% up to 20.1, up to 21.3, up to 24.7. And then it spiked at 26% in the year 2018-19 and then dropped back down again. So I say just really pointing out the fact that 2018-19 wasn't perhaps wasn't the most typical of years. Beyond that, I'd like to say as a new head of service, sort of joined the service at a fairly challenging time this year. Staffing wise, we had the sad loss of the principal operational services manager, and we have the operational services manager for waste and recycling is leaving next month. So we've had a few staffing challenges on top of coronavirus to deal with of late, and sort of hence the suggestion, and it's only a suggestion, of perhaps looking forward for further scope to make progress over the coming year. Beyond that, I think it's perhaps just appropriate just to open for questions, and quite happy to answer things that as they come up.
Thank you, Craig. So it looks as though we've kind of gone backwards slightly compared to, the last 12 months. It's only a slight fall. I'm looking at the second table, in the percentage recycled compared to Q4 previously. And I just wonder why that is when the garden waste, elsewhere it says the garden waste scheme is increasing.
Yes, I mean, I did have some further questions regarding that with other colleagues as well, and there's no obvious answer to that other than, as I say, the 2018 didn't necessarily follow the same trend that had been happening before, and I say the garden waste has certainly from this year continued to grow. So we've grown by a further 11% this year, and hopefully that'll start to feed its way through into the next lots of statistics as they become available, which will be later on this month, as Liz mentioned.
Thank you. So any questions for?
Yes, Chair.
Right.
Dave Challoner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to make a comment on obviously our refuse collection since the beginning and the start of COVID-19. We've had a lot of hard work, and we've kept up the service. Like Liz stated, there were some councils just stopped. We carried on because of all the hard work that the officers and the head of departments did, working with the health and safety team to put risk assessments in place to make sure that everybody who was part of these teams were working safely and that weren't being exposed, or if they were, minimal exposure to a COVID-19 situation. So I think that needs putting on record, Chair, that they did a fantastic job and still are doing a fantastic job, even though things seem like they're dropping off. They have done a tremendous job keeping the streets, everything clean within Bassetlaw. My other thing that I'd like to make a comment on is obviously all the major supermarket chains have introduced these home delivery services and doorstep deliveries and all things like that. And obviously it's made an increase in single-use plastic bags again. We were working with supermarket chains to find out if they were having these biodegradable ones and things like that. But when you think that some of these supermarket chains can be doing anything up to a 10,000 item delivery service a day, that's a lot of carrier bags, that's coming back into the system, that if they're not the biodegradable type, that the ones which people will be using them to chuck in the wheelie bins or whatever, and all this will be going to landfill. So maybe that's something that we could ask as a council to the supermarket chains within Bassetlaw, what kind of carrier bags they are using on these doorstep deliveries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Councillor Challoner. Yeah, we had a couple of good questions, comments on the question. Just before you sort of answer that question about carrier bags, Craig, I just wanted to echo David's comments. I'm sure the whole committee would like to thank the refuse collection service for fantastic work they've done through this crisis, and I know people have very much appreciated that, so I'm sure we'd want to put that on record.
Shall I respond?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point around the carrier bags, and I think it's the impact of coronavirus is not solely on the supermarkets and solely on the carrier bags. I think it has led to an increase in single-use plastics more widely and other waste. It certainly changed behaviours, and I've got some information. So the glass recycling sites that are within the borough, the Bring sites, the actual tonnages for the period April to July this year has actually gone up by 22%. So it's gone up from 379 tons up to 489 tons. So there's quite sort of profound changes that have happened. Hopefully, some for the better in the short term. And I guess that statistic itself, in terms of increased glass recycling, you could question: are people's behaviours changed for the better, or are people just drinking more? is a question that could arise from that one. In respect of the carrier bags, I mean, that is something will be from a supermarket's perspective. That'll be a national decision that contacting the local branch of a supermarket, I believe would be unlikely to have any significant change. And I do know the likes of the Environment Bill and other aspects are very much looking to minimise generally the single-use plastics and production from supermarkets, and a number of them have made significant commitments themselves to be reducing plastics, not just from the bags but also from other products such as ready-made sandwiches and fruit and vegetables that are on stock.
Thank you, Craig. Yeah, I think we've probably all noticed the increase in single-use plastics. Like, some cafes are takeaway only, and they've gone back to the little plastic things for milk and takeaway cups. So yeah, there is that aspect.
John, could I just come in a second?
Yeah, hang on, David. I just want to just what Craig said about more people coming to Bring sites. Are we able to cope with that, Craig, in terms of emptying the bottle banks and that kind of thing? Carton.
Yes, that hasn't been a problem to date. I mean, we don't directly empty those ourselves, so they come in and are collected, and we get the recycling credits for that. And I say to date that hasn't caused any problems.
Thank you. Sorry, Claire, you got.
Yeah, only a couple of comments. It's not criticisms really. This weekend we've made quite a few tip runs for various reasons, and the tip is working well. And I mean, there is big queues for the tip, but at least it shows people are still using the tips and going to the tips, and everybody appears to have cars full of rubbish. I mean, we all promote brown bins and out. Sorry, folks. It's put me off now. But yeah, I was going to say, I mean, can't fault the pickup of any of the bins round us all throughout. The same as David said, I can only say they were fantastic lads that were coming round doing it. So that's really, really positive. But I was pleased to see the tips running well and lots of people going. I think the only thing that bugged me was I wanted to get in the tip and pull some stuff out and recycle it. So, but yeah, that's it really.
I mean, thank you for the positive comments. I'll make sure that's fed back to the teams. And
one other thing on the plastic
and regarding
bags,
the household waste recycling centres.
Yeah, the plastic bags. As to now, if you have home delivery, there is an option button to say you don't want your shopping delivered in plastic bags. And when you go to click and collect, they don't put it into plastic bags then. It just goes into the the big trays that they have, and then you can either they leave it there and they'll go off and you can put it in the boot yourself, or they'll lift it into the boot for you. But they are trying to, you know, encourage people not to use plastic bags. I don't know what anywhere else is like.
Okay, thanks, Claire.
Okay.
John, it's Mark Watson. Could I make a comment?
Yes, certainly.
Under section 3.5 on page 78, with the Environment Bill, I'm quite interested by the expanded range of things that we'll have to collect, which includes plastic pots, tubs and trays, which are things that currently are not recycled under the Veolia contract. So I'd be interested to know if this is an opportunity to renegotiate the contract county-wide with Veolia. And secondly, with regard to the bottle banks, I'd like to praise the work of Jeanette Walker, who's always very responsive whenever we report that it needs emptying. Gets it done very quickly.
Thanks. Thank you, Mark.
Chair, could I respond?
Yeah, could we just give Craig? Could we just give?
No, I'm quite happy for.
That.
I'm quite happy for Councillor Lee to come in there, and I'll add to it as required.
Sorry,
yes.
Yes, Chair. As you know, I had a meeting before this, and I came back 10 minutes ago. So I missed the beginning of it. But with regard to renegotiating the contract with Veolia, so that's a county council contract. And if the government does allow us to collect these additional items, and we don't know yet whether or not they will, then the contract will be renegotiated. There will be a lead-in period because the area has a number of sites and they'll have to put different equipment in there and collect the different kinds of materials. So there will be a lead-in period, but it will be good for Bassetlaw because we'll be able to collect additional items. And I also wanted to thank members for mentioning the work of all the staff in the waste area, because as you know, we kept all of our services going, unlike many other areas across the country and certainly across Nottinghamshire. And it wasn't easy, but thanks to the staff who really pulled out all the stops from Tim all the way through all of the staff. They've done a really good job.
Oh, we lost you, Julie.
I stopped speaking, Chair.
Oh, there must be a lag. Your mouth was moving. There must be a lag.
Chairman.
Yeah, is that Councillor Presley?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, two or three things. I talked to Craig about the waste from McDonald's, where they were going to a national scheme. The way he had the receipt, it had the name of the person on it, and therefore if they dumped it, you could pick that up. When we were at one time, we used to do paper as well, Craig. At one time, we used to collect paper as a council, and I'd like to see whether that come back or not. So the other thing I would think is that Craig comes with a plan for Bassetlaw to up the cycling rates that we have, and put that back to everybody to look at, and then comment on it. I think that's the way forward for a lot of it in Bassetlaw, because we don't seem to have a plan to go forward. A lot of this is money, I know that, and it costs the money, and the government changes the way we do it as well. But I think we need to look at that, Chairman. But if Craig could come back to us as a scrutiny meeting to look at the plan for Bassetlaw in the next 5-10 years, we could get that forward, Chairman.
Okay. I don't know if Craig or Julie wants to respond.
Shall I come in there? I mean, the plan will certainly be formulated. We are slightly beholden on the Environment Bill passing through Parliament. Within the bill as it stands, as I say, there's a number of items that are included that could or would have significant impact on the recycling rates within Bassetlaw. So a couple of examples, one being the glass bottles. Potentially that could be curbside. If that's curbside, that will make a significant change to the way that we currently operate. As the legislation is currently drafted, it would also make it mandatory to have weekly food waste collections, which clearly, and that would be separate from garden waste as well. It wouldn't be a case of putting food waste in with garden waste. That would have to be separate. Clearly, that's something we don't do just now. So we'll have a significant impact in terms of the resources that we need, in terms of staffing, in terms of vehicles, and that's something we are very mindful of, and currently putting a review of roles and responsibilities and staffing at the Environment Services to make sure that there is a head of that service, a manager of that service who has sufficient opportunity to make that detailed planning. So the Environment Bill is one of the significant challenges, but there's also the housing growth as well, and the 9,000 additional, or scheduled within the draft local plan, 9,000 additional houses over the next 15 years. So all of that brings with it challenges and a need to plan effectively for the future. So I'm quite happy to be working through a plan. As I say, we'll rest assured one will be developed. But I say there will be secondary legislation that also comes after the Environment Bill, which lays out some more of the details. I say at this stage, as an example of that, there is still a possibility that garden waste could be a free service that has to be provided everywhere. There's been significant negative feedback to that in the consultation document from local authorities, and it's unlikely that it would be made free. But that is, I say, it's still not yet finalised. So we need to keep a very close eye on the passing through of the Environment Bill and develop it from there. And perhaps just the last thing I would add on this. Councillor Lee also chairs the Joint Waste Management Committee across Nottinghamshire, and the solution that we put in place within Bassetlaw clearly has to be one that works across the whole of Nottinghamshire as well. And it's a big piece of work, and we're on it in terms of keeping up to date with the latest position.
Thank you, Craig. So clearly we're awaiting the Environment Bill to go through and say all the details to be clearer. But there's going to be a lot of changes by the looks of it.
Hi, John. Can I speak, Councillor?
Hello, yeah, Councillor Merriweather, Debbie.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, if the government do pass these plans for different recycling, will that mean that we'll need different bins, and will we have money coming in to accommodate us putting new bins on?
It certainly would mean the food waste collection certainly would mean additional bin provision. In the stages as the bill was being developed and the consultation that was happening, the government did state that the changes would be fully funded. However, I think we wait to see as things progress and what funding is actually available and what caveats there are with the funding and what it would actually cover. But we need to, on the back of that, it extends to things like the infrastructure at Carlton Forest Depot site, the space that we have available for refuse freighter parking for staff and such like as well. So I think it would be it would be amazing if government funded all of the costs that it resulted in for Bassetlaw.
And would there be a monitoring system as well?
Pardon? Can you repeat that?
Would there be a monitoring system to make sure that the people of Bassetlaw are adhering to what they should be putting in what bins?
I think that will, the monitoring question around the monitoring system, I think that would need to be all encompassing. A significant change like this would also need a lot of information, promotion in advance, consultation to an extent. We will be partially, or will be dictated by the legislation of what we have to provide. but the means to do that and the use of the different, for example, the food waste, the caddy type and such like, there might be some scope to get some input into that. But we will, yeah, I mean, we would look at trying to minimise contamination, and certainly, you know, in the initial new phase of any new scheme, we'd need to be trying to educate as well as enforce the changes. And we do have an environment warden who does go around checking on the recycling bins, stickering bins that are unacceptable in terms of the contents that are in it, and providing leaflets and education and information to the worst offenders. So it is something, yeah, you're quite right, we'd need to build into our planning.
Excellent, thank you. And I'd like to thank you, all the refuge people. They were really brilliant during the COVID and still are.
Thank you.
Can I come in there, John, please? It's Maddie.
Yes, Maddie.
Can I ask Craig a question, please? The leaflet we had out previously and the information on the website, the leaflet wasn't good enough. And I think we talked about education, as you just said, about new leaflets going out. But I'm just wondering if there's any update on the leaflet we've already had that goes out on the bins. And I know Councillor Lee Julie's put him out onto the council tax thing. It goes out with them. But quite honestly, it's not useful. We did discuss this on the waste and recycling when we did the working group. It hasn't changed. I don't know whether it still comes from county. But if we're going to renew it, I suggest that we need a new leaflet anyway, regardless, but wait for the bill comes and then add everything else on. But it's got to be made a lot clearer and a lot clearer to people to recycle, because at the moment it's not happening as much as it should do, and we know by the figures that's produced. So what I am asking really, are we having an update on the leaflet anyway? And can we make it more clearer to people what they can and can't recycle? Because this is the public education which is not getting through at the moment.
Chair, if I could answer that, because I've been involved in it for quite a long time, and we've had this discussion previously. As Craig said, I chair the county-wide waste group, and sitting underneath us are a number of other groups, and people like Jeanette Walker, who's already been mentioned. So the people around the county who do a lot of this work meet regularly for specific things like the leaflets. So sometimes we produce our own, Bassett Law, but often we'll do something in consultation with other areas in Nottinghamshire and with Veolia. I've looked into it to see if there is one leaflet or one publication that we've done that's made more of a difference than anything else that we've put out. And as far as I can see, there isn't anything that's made a particular difference to the rates of recycling. And as part of the group that I chair, other areas have looked the same to see whether or not there's one particular thing that's made that difference. And there isn't. So I think what we need to do is keep on issuing the guidance, keep on encouraging people. I sometimes see on Facebook people get very frustrated because they can't, for example, recycle pizza boxes because of the grease in them, which contaminates the recycling. And I occasionally see people on Facebook say, well, just put it underneath everything else. Sometimes some people purposely contaminate the loads, which is very sad, but we are constrained by the contract, so we can only recycle what we're allowed to recycle. And I think, Maddie, Councillor Richardson, I think the answer is consistent messages, but different leaflets each time, encouraging people to recycle what they're allowed to recycle, and actually trying to keep the message more simple, because it's quite frustrating, I think, for a lot of people around Bassett Law, sort of seeing all these different leaflets and not quite knowing what they can and what they can't. So Tetra Packs, for example, people don't understand why they can't recycle Tetra Packs, but they can't be recycled by the Veolia equipment. So yeah, there will be additional leaflets, and it's whether or not you focus on what you can recycle or you focus on what you can't recycle. And I think the evidence is focusing on what you can recycle. But then, you know, you can recycle margarine tubs, and you can recycle plastic milk bottles, but you can't recycle other types of plastic. And I get why that's confusing. So keeping the message clear, relatively simple about what you can recycle. So yes, we will be putting more things out and trying to keep it as clear for people as possible.
Yeah, thanks, Julie.
Perhaps very, very briefly, just to add to that, week commencing the 21st of September is National Recycle Week. We have through Jeanette Walker and the communications team a series of social media posts and information that will be going out. So, that is the type of thing that, clearly we're not actually creating any more paper by doing it that way. Arguably, it doesn't reach all of the people, but it reaches some of the people, and it's part of a wider publicity campaign that will take place. So look out for things from next week onwards.
And also to add to that, in terms of the different age groups, because you've talked about Jeanette Walker a few times, and up until the COVID lockdown, she was regularly going into schools and educating the children, particularly in primary schools, who then hopefully go home and repeat the message to their parents. So we try and target lots of different groups, lots of different areas to get the message out. But you're right, it's difficult.
That's great. Thank you. I just wanted to say that some of the recommendations were around the website, and one particularly on page 88 was about promoting a link to TerraCycle, where things that can't be recycled at the moment can be recycled through that. And I just wondered why that hasn't been done, or can we expect progress on that?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps that is one area there where we could take that forward a bit more. I think the issue became there that it wasn't just about providing a link on the website to existing opportunities. It was looking to try and generate some new opportunities as well. However, very sort of hot off the press in September, I don't know if you picked up on the news, it was just announced in September this year, the makeup company L'Oreal, and they're under their brand of Maybelline, have set up sites for cosmetics recycling. So for articles, the pots, the makeup pots, and a whole range of different plastics that are very difficult to recycle, where people can take them to the supermarkets, and the likes of Tesco's, Boots, Sainsbury's, Superdrug have all signed up. And there is, and this is something I've recently become aware of, so we've not promoted it more widely, but there's an interactive map, and I've been on it, and on a quick scan of looking at the map, there are 12 sites in Bassetlaw. So that is something that we could, I think, relatively easily have a little promotion on through social media to try and get that message, social media and beyond, to try and get that message out that that's run by the company L'Oreal. Arguably, I mean, it's the right thing to do to promote it, but it will have absolutely minimal impact on our recycling rates ourselves as a council. So in terms of our performance indicators, if you look purely at the performance indicators, that would be minimal, because that wouldn't then sort of go into the district council's recycling totals. But I say, it's not saying it's not a good thing to do, because clearly it is, but just making you aware that type of that particular action wouldn't impact on the indicators.
Craig, could I just pick up on this slightly wider point of informing people of other opportunities for recycling? Because at the moment, our website just gives a list of the council facilities, whereas, for instance, a lot of the supermarkets have collection bins for plastic bags and that kind of thing in their car parks that we can't recycle through the council facilities. And so just to expand the website information to include the other recycling opportunities within Bassetlaw might be a way of improving things overall.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion, and yeah, it's one we can take forward and build into our communications plan.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think that is very good, because I, for one, take my plastic bags to Sainsbury's, and yeah, we ought to be telling people, because people do take this very seriously. Some people, are sort of a bit stressed that they can't recycle as much as they would like to. Sorry, David Presley.
So it was myself, I think, Chair.
Oh, is it? Sorry.
Yeah.
And Cultate.
Just 3 points. It's a difficult one, really, obviously, with the amount of strength, certainly my part as an accounts, but I think we really need to think how we reward and recognise within the budgetary constraints we've got our refuse workers. I appreciate there's been a lot of frontline work, you know, people out and about over the COVID-19 pandemic, but I think especially from my constituents, the work of and the positivity of them refuse workers, we need to think of a council more than just words. And I'm up for any ideas off of anybody out there that we can come collectively as a council and how we reward them, not just the words. You know, it's something tangible. That's a way of saying thank you. I'd also like to move on because I know quite a bit about the environment bill that's coming up, and strategically there's some things for the council that we might not be aware of that's going to massively affect us or affect society. Those you're not aware, I'm very sceptical of the word recycling. It isn't. A significant amount of our waste isn't recycled, although we hit the target to call it that. It isn't. It's basically put into incinerators, refuse-derived fuel. Now, why is that important? Because it goes, well, a lot of it goes to Denmark and Sweden and the Netherlands. Now, Sweden and the Netherlands are introduced as tax on this type of waste, and Denmark are getting increasingly reluctant to take UK waste, although they do make money out of it. If you actually read the Environment Bill, it talks about increasing efficiency in the UK energy from waste market, right? Bear with me. At the moment, we recycle 45% of our waste, roughly, in Bassetlaw. The new government targets, from my understanding, and stand for correctly, is hopefully going to be about 65%. I would be expecting over the next few years to hit this target to see an increase, a significant increase in localised energy from waste plants and the impact that's going to have on our planning within the council. And I think it's just something we need to be aware of. It's very important, the little details, but potentially there's going to be some very contentious decisions that have to be made by this council to this bill.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if Craig wants to
give Craig I just respond to the
Julie, yes.
Stuff about whether or not about the environment bill that was raised and the fact that recycled goods are incinerated. My understanding from Veolia is that they recycle a small amount of items than many other recycling companies across the country. And Veolia say that's because they actually do recycle and they make money on all of the different things that they recycle. So some companies do send things abroad, and we remember perhaps 2 years ago when there were lots of things standing in docks because places like China refused to take our waste anymore. But my understanding from Veolia in Nottinghamshire is that our recycled waste is not incinerated. But if we do increase what we collect, then there is a distinct possibility that some of that stuff, which they can't find a market for in the UK at the moment, might go to incineration. Our residual waste does go to incineration.
Okay. I don't know if Craig wants to comment, but of course what we're doing here is focusing on our scrutiny review and following up the recommendations. I just want members to just bear that in mind.
Sorry, Chair. James Nash has had his hand raised for quite a few minutes.
Oh,
I'm not sure if you saw it or not.
Yeah, sorry, John.
James, come in.
Yeah, no problem. I'm not sure if we're watching hand monitoring, but yeah, I mean, John, you may remember we actually picked up on this indicator and the potential slippage of it, of some of them, not probably 6 months ago, where we started to see it was falling. So it's disappointing to see it's falling again, and I think we're still a long way behind Nottinghamshire as a whole. And I guess it's just making me think whether we need to think a bit bigger on, and certainly on the actions that are in place. You know, if we look at things like TerraCycle, I just went here. I do TerraCycle. I've got a bag here of one type of stuff. I've got another bag here of different types of stuff. And if in reality in Bassetlaw there's only a handful of places where you can do that, I can do that because I'm in Sheffield, and there's an opportunity to do that. So I think we probably need to revisit that. And again, you know, the one thing that Cabinet questioned of us was that idea of a recycling wheel. Now, I think we all agreed it might not be the right answer, but we need to think about the way in which we communicate. And maybe the one thing I would say to Craig and to Julie to just think about is, you know, the messaging, that sort of transactional messaging, which is very much geared around this is what you can and can't do. I don't know that, well, I would suggest that possibly isn't working. And a lot of the stuff that you read around changing behaviours, it's about finding that mechanism that will make people think I should be doing this. So if you think when you drive on the motorway and you now see those signs that are young children talking to you saying my daddy worked here or my parent worked here, that there's research that's gone into that, which is about changing behaviours. And I just wonder whether we need to think a bit bigger and really challenge ourselves on this, because it feels to me like we're just grinding to a halt, and that's not a criticism. That's just where people have reached maybe their natural limit, and we're going to need to do something that will take them beyond that. And I think that might need to think differently beyond just those transactional messages if we really want to start seeing the percentage increase.
Okay. Interesting point. Does anybody want to respond to that? Julie?
Chair, I will.
If I could let Julie respond.
That's certainly something we can take back to the county-wide group and have one of the groups that sits under that have a look at a different kind of message. Certainly there's stuff across the country. So we've looked at best practice across the country and what people have done. But you're right, James, that's certainly something additional, something different that we might do. So yeah, we can have a look at that.
Yeah. And I was about to come in and realised I was talking while on mute, and hence Councillor Lee stepping in. I was going to entirely agree. I think the behavioural change messaging is very important as well. I think there's perhaps two different types of messaging, and it's the clarity of can and can't, what can and can't go in for those people that are already bought into it. But there is also then perhaps the wider benefits to the environment message to encourage more people to want to do it, and then they need to know how to do it correctly. And the part of the drive with the Environment Bill is to try and simplify things nationally and trying to specify consistency, because you're saying, Councillor Nash, about being in Sheffield, there's different things collected in different areas, and that's been one of the guiding principles within the Environment Bill and the sort of the government waste strategy review that came out sort of the year before. That was trying to simplify it. But I think it's certainly behavioural change messaging is something that we need to take on board as well and try and incorporate that. Personally, I think the big change would come if we start to collect different types of waste, and significantly the growth of the garden waste. So we've grown it by 11% over this current year, by over 1,000 subscriptions, which is brilliant given the conditions that we've worked through. That's what really starts to make the difference, because particularly within Nottinghamshire, the districts who have the higher recycling rates are ones who have more established garden waste services and or collect other recycling as well. So to make the step change, it would need, in my opinion, something considerable to change in terms of what we actually collect, as well as on top of the messaging.
Excuse me, Chair, can I just come back in a minute? It's Maddie, please.
Okay, Councillor Richardson.
Just one comment. This is what
I'm just going to make this, Maddie, I'm going to make this the last point and then sum up on, we've had an excellent debate.
That's fine, thank you. It's just the point that's what I was talking about when I spoke before. We've been trying to change things before, and I think it's a good idea, and James is right, so's Julie. We need to go out the box to think of getting the message through, because it's just not working. So I agree with what has been said. That's all I want to say. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, thank you. Yes, there's been some excellent comments, and members are passionate about this, as many of the people are out there, and we are disappointed that we can't seem to budge these figures. So there's been a lot of good points made, and thank you very much to
Craig and Julie, for your contributions. If I could just draw people's attention to the sort of recommendations, which was about members, consider really the progress made, and the recommendation within the report suggested by Craig is to extend the monitoring period beyond what it would normally be, which is normally 12 months, but to monitor these progress against these recommendations until March 2022 because of the reasons that have been outlined. Is everybody in favour of that recommendation, that we extend that monitoring period? So this will come back to us.
I think everyone, I think we're just not saying anything, but
I'm just pausing. If nobody said anything, I'm happy then that we have made that recommendation. And thank you very much, Craig. Thank you very much, Julie. As I usually say at this point, we've got
John.
An agenda, and you're welcome to stay, but equally I know you've got other things to do, so thank you. Who's that, please?
Sorry, John, I was on mute just as I was coming in there. I just wonder, obviously, the action plan as we currently have it, another 18 months of that and it'll be very old and tired and probably lack relevance, especially in the context of the Environment Bill. So I just wonder whether Craig or we could commit to at least refreshing this if we are extending it, because there may well be extra things that should be on there that aren't on there at the moment. I appreciate this came from the previous activity which Maddie led, so I appreciate that might not be a normal sequence of events, but certainly if we're monitoring something, it would be good to at least have a milestone that's going to enable us to refresh it at some stage.
I think that's a good point, and I think when the Environment Bill has gone through and the pictures become clearer, we can ask for an update to the committee if Craig is happy about that. If Craig and Julia could give us an update on at that point, we'll be talking about the way forward and which of our recommendations have been progressed and perhaps which ones have to be changed in the light of events.
Yes, that'll be fine. We'll do that.
Yeah, certainly a report, and some aspects will be at higher level, other aspects will be more detailed, and we can certainly update on what's been delivered as well, and where the service will be heading in the future.
Thank you for that. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So,
thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good night.
Thank you. So moving on to agenda item 6 and the forward plan. Pages 17 to 19. Just to remind members that as soon as you receive your agenda, you can ask the clerk to contact the relevant officer to provide a briefing note on a particular report on the forward plan, or invite them or the cabinet member to attend. And also private and confidential decisions can be discussed in this section. Now, there was, we did request more information for the committee about key decision 838, Bastard Law's response to the government white paper on the reform of the planning system. I don't know if Steve or Richard want to comment on that. Beverly basically sent an email saying the report hasn't been written yet. So there's not a lot at this stage that they can say, but clearly a lot of members are going to be interested in this.
Thanks, Chair. If I could just clarify, Beverly had indicated that there's a significant amount of work to be done by officers in the collation of that report, and it's obviously on its way at the moment. Therefore, obviously myself and Richard are not planning officers, so we're not in a position to comment in any detail, but we can obviously pass anything back if there are any issues that members wish to raise. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, Chairman.
Yeah,
I raised it with you.
It was Councillor Presley who raised
it.
I think
it's that important that we need to know what we're going to say as a council. This is the most important document we've had for a long time. It's going to change the way planning changes all over the country. And it will be, for people, it'll change things the way they can comment on planning applications. Once the area is agreed, then it's gone. And you can have 10,000 houses, this has been daft like, 10,000 houses, and you don't know they're going to happen. So we've got to get this right, Chairman. I think, when do we meet again? I don't know. Because if we don't meet before that, his response, we've no come back on it, Chairman.
I believe when we meet again, it's end of October, it'll be coming to us as a key decision then, that paper, the response. But I mean, I do agree that clearly we're going to want to comment on this, and everybody will share your sort of concerns about this, David, I'm sure. I don't know if Steve wants to come back on that.
Yes, yeah, well, just to add, Chair, as you've rightly pointed out, it's a key decision. It can't be implemented until it's been through scrutiny committee. So the full report will be submitted to yourselves. So there will be an opportunity for you to consider that at that stage.
Yeah, and we'll all get the cabinet agenda before they meet.
But on that, Chairman, will the response been sent before we've time to comment on it?
No, it can't.
Sorry, Chair,
yeah, Steve.
Yeah, just to reiterate, it's a key decision. It cannot be implemented until it's been through yourselves, unless there were extenuating circumstances which have not been indicated so far, and that's why it's listed on the forward plan.
So before it's implemented, it has to come to us.
Yeah. So the suggestion is we need the planning officers there or the cabinet member on that meeting, then, Chairman. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We will. Have a good discussion over that at that meeting, 27th of October. Thank you, David. Are there any questions or comments on any other items on the forward plan? No. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 7, key decisions of Cabinet, September 2020, 1st of September 2020, page 21 to 27. So starting on page 21, we've got the budget monitoring and capital programme update to 30th of June 2020, key decision 830. Resolved that 1, the position with regard to revenue and capital budget monitoring be noted. 2, other variations to 2020/21 capital programme as discussed in paragraph 3.26 and detailed in appendix 3 of the report be approved. And 3, the proposed resourcing of the capital programme and the level of capital receipts currently available to fund any further capital expenditure, paragraphs 3.32 to 3.34 of the report be noted. And 4, quarterly update and performance against the approved Treasury Management prudential indicators for the period ending 30th of June 2020. Paragraph 3.47 of the report refers be noted. Okay, on this key decision, does anybody have any questions?
John, you know, I don't know if anyone will know the answer, but the 821,000 figure on page 21 at the bottom of the first full paragraph, is that effectively what we're saying it has cost the council to deal with COVID-19? I don't know.
It's difficult without the relevant officer being here, or cabinet member. Steve, I don't know whether you're able to respond.
I think it is. I was at the. I listened into the audit committee. Maybe Councillor Challoner will know. I listened in, and I was fairly sure it was sort of the 700, 800 figure. But I'm just wondering whether that's an updated view, because I thought it was more like 700.
Yeah, that's my understanding of the situation, but obviously that figure is subject to movement. So, but yeah, I believe it was in that region was the latest update I'd heard.
Yeah. Okay.
But part of it was part of losses, not just additional costs. The losses of income coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the cumulative impact, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is anyone against endorsing this decision or wishing to abstain? Okay, that key decision is endorsed. And on page 23, we've got the allotment policy in relation to the keeping of bees, key decision 742. Resolved that an amendment to the current allotment policy to allow the keeping of bees on council-owned allotment sites, subject to prior assessment of plot suitability, competency, experience and equipment, as detailed in Appendix 1, brackets as amended, be approved. Does anyone have any questions? David, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Is that okay?
Yes, that's okay.
Yeah, on allotments, a lot of people are getting thefts on the allotments. I just wondered if we can ask for people the relevant officers to look at this. Yeah.
So that's about reports of increasing thefts.
Yeah.
What we could ask for is a written response to that, and what is happening and what is the council trying to do about that. Is that okay, Steve? We do want to comment?
Yeah, it'd be helpful if members have separately outside of this meeting, if members have got any information about that, so we can get some context to this. It's the first I've heard about it. That's not to say it's not taking place, but we can obviously make sure that information, because it could be confined to an allotment or an area, a town, etc., or it could be across the piece. So if we can get a little bit more information, if members want to forward that on to me, then I can speak to relevant officers in Craig's service about that, and we can take that on.
Thank you,
I'll do
Steve.
that, Chairman.
Yeah,
I'll do that.
Great. Yeah, fortunately, I've not had any experience of that, so that's good. But yeah, I can. That'll be interesting to find out. Okay, page 24. We've got. Sorry, just going back a bit. Is anyone against endorsing that decision about the allotment policy, or wishing to abstain?
John, I'd like to abstain, please.
Okay. Okay, so if that is the only abstention, nobody's voting against, the key decision is endorsed. Thank you. On page 24, performance outturn, Q1 2020/21, key decision 828. Resolve that no further action is required to address areas of performance indicators shown in the appendices, and that the contents of this report and appendices analysing performance for Q1 2020/21 be noted. Of course, this is on our agenda, so we are looking at this and discussing this. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Is anyone against endorsing this decision or wishing to abstain? Okay, the key decision is endorsed. Thank you. On page 25, Regeneration and Growth Strategy, Local Industrial Strategy, Key Decision 745. Resolve that option 1, as set out at 5.1 in the report, be approved. And 2, Cabinet agrees to participate in a member workshop in December 2020 to discuss and agree the state of the district report and the draft strategy outline. Does anyone have any questions?
Can I just get, sorry, John, can I just get an update from Steve on the rural plan? Steve will know that I was involved in drafting that. I'm just not sure where it is landing now, given everything that's happened over the past few months, because it obviously references here the emerging rural plan being sort of drafted into this. So are we talking about merging them here?
I have discussed this with with Councillor Dukes as the cabinet member. We just had a recent meeting about it. I think members will recall that cabinet had approved our rural plan and it was ready. We were going to take it out to parishes and our forums. However, that was literally just before the lockdown. So what we are intending to do is make some minor revision. There are a couple of reports that are on this that were considered at cabinet, particularly the regeneration growth strategy, local infrastructure, that refer to the important role that Bassett Law needs to play within this, particularly with the local enterprise partnership and pushing rural regeneration, which we feel is something that is not getting the focus it should be doing. And so therefore there was an intention to update on that, but also an opportunity just to reflect on the importance of place local communities, particularly the response across our rural communities to COVID that can be demonstrated, and that we think there's a value that should be reflected. So we're going to pick those items up and then get that strategy back out. So I'm hoping that by early October we should be in a position to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, can I just ask for a quick thing? I think this is absolutely crucial when we talk about the members' workshop in December. Obviously, the furlough scheme's ending or been withdrawn in October. Can we make sure, because my temptation was to ask for that workshop to be brought forward, but I understand we need to get the data to analyse the effect on Bassett Law. Can we please request that workshops at the start of December as soon as possible? Because as a council, we need to ensure we're on a front foot mitigating any potential job loss in our community. And I just don't want it to go to mid-December. It's Christmas, and there's some, we're all passionate about this, but there's natural slide the later into December we get.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Culsay. Yeah, I'm sure members would agree with that. The earlier the better, but as was said, we need to get the data first. So, Steve, can we possibly feed that back early December if possible?
We'll feedback that to our colleagues who are organising that event.
Thank you. So we were talking about that regeneration and growth strategy key decision. Are there any more questions on that? Is anyone against endorsing this decision or wishing to abstain? Nope. Okay, the key decision is endorsed. And on page 26, we've got the annual local infrastructure funding statement, key decision 818. And resolve that option 1 as detailed in 5.1 in the report be agreed. Actually, what I've got here is the resolutions to the previous one, so I think there's a mistake. I'm just looking at my script, so bear with me. Sorry, yeah, so it's on page 27, isn't it? Option 1, the Cabinet accept the financial details contained in the associated IFS and allowed it to be published in its current form as the annual monitoring of the local infrastructure funding across the district. Publication has also traditionally in Basel law meant that communities can then draw down the neighbourhood proportion following the endorsement of the report. And option 2, go back a bit. as it was, yeah. So resolve that option 1 as detailed in 5.1 of the report be agreed. And 2, Cabinet members participate in a member workshop in November 2020 to discuss the updated strategic infrastructure project list and agree the method of the prioritisation of strategic projects as required by the new regulations. Yeah, so it is different from the previous resolution. I thought the wording seemed to be very similar, and I thought I'd come across some copy and paste, but that is not the case. Does anybody have any questions?
John, I think in on page 107 in the Cabinet agenda, we're missing North Leverton Parish Council in that table. I'm just wondering if someone could clarify whether that's a mistake or whether that's because there's no money in the neighbourhood proportion. I don't think we'll be able to do that now, but if that could just be noted.
We can note that and ask for a written response, James. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Is anyone against endorsing this decision or wish to abstain? No, the key decision is endorsed. Okay, item 8, waive of call-in, decision taken without sufficient notice, there are none. Item 9, possible call-in, decisions made by Cabinet or by Cabinet members, there are none. So we now have reports of Director of Corporate Resources. Item 10A, performance outturn, Q1 2020/21 on pages 29 to 44. I'm going to hand over to Steve Brown now, Head of Corporate Services, to outline the report. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. I think members of the committee will be aware that in June, Cabinet agreed a revised performance framework to reflect the impact of COVID on the organisation. This comprises of 2 elements. You've got a corporate health check, which is Appendix A, and that includes 10 indicators. And then there's a tailored suite of performance indicators, Appendix B, 22 of those. And these were chosen to reflect key areas that we could monitor and track the impact of COVID, both on the organisation, but also importantly on our communities as well. So there is a commentary within the report on those individual indicators, those that are showing a variance. But the key underlying issue for members will be that they'll identify that a lot of those indicators that are obviously flagging at red are relating to income, as Councillor Presley had mentioned earlier on. You know, we have seen a significant drop in income in certain areas. Obviously, we've had other issues that would normally require face-to-face activity, but for example, our programme of community engagement. But I am very pleased to sort of comment that we have found new ways of engaging with the community. There have been some excellent examples of work that have been done across the piece on that around engagement, particularly with the business community on that. So I'll hand over to yourselves if there are any questions on those performance indicators. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Steve, for that concise but clear summary. Are there any questions?
Yes, please, Chair.
Yeah.
2 things. Just looking at the rent arrears, that it's very close to actually achieving the target there. However, I suspect that come 2 or 3 more months' time that might slip even further. But I think under extraordinary circumstances, I don't think that that's one that we could particularly punish ourselves over, when I know that there's work going ahead to encourage people to come forward if they've got any financial difficulties to try and meet it before it becomes an issue. And the other one, I'm intrigued really, and this is on page 44, number of businesses receiving direct advice. Does the two-way conversations that have been undergoing between the council and businesses in awarding the grants that have come through from central government, does that count as advice, receiving direct advice from the council? Because if it does, we will have achieved that target with the amount of money and conversations that this authority has had between ourselves and local businesses. And we could probably account for about half a dozen just in the conversations that have gone on between the council and North Notts Arena. That would surely take it up to at least 21.
Thank you, Councillor Carrington-Wilder. The way it's outlined in the appendix, the brief comment there is, I think, a little bit misleading. But because of that, more commentary has been put in Steve's report on page 32. Steve, I don't know if you want to comment on that, but it does expand on how much we are actually engaging with local businesses.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. Obviously, that as Councillor Carrington-Wilder has pointed out, it was quite a limited PI. It was never intended for this situation. Hence, you can see all the work that was being referred to is identified on page 32. Over 2,000 businesses have been engaged with by council officers to help them. I think we've got one of the best performances in take-up of the grants that were made available to us. There was considerable effort by finance colleagues to make sure that businesses were aware of those opportunities to access those grants. And and then subsequently our COVID advisors who've been out and about in the town centres assisting businesses. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that, Steve.
Can I just come back on that, please?
Yes, Robin.
Yeah. I mean, it is wonderful work that's been undertaken by that. And the other thing I'd just like to flag up is that I know that some of the conversations that's been had between officers and businesses in regarding allocation of grants have been very thorough. And I would suspect that when we've gone a little bit further, we may find that Bassetlaw has probably got one of the best rates of not giving out monies or allocating monies where they weren't needed, or should have been awarded. So I suspect that when it comes out, when the government's already flouting something like 2.4 billion of fraud or mistaken applications, that Bassetlaw will have a very low rate in that. And I think that's down to the efficiency and the diligence of our officers, and they should be congratulated for that.
Thank you for that. Well said. Yeah. Yes, I'm not sure. Hopefully, the government will appreciate the role that's been played by local council officers in implementing the grant schemes and so on. Someone else wants you to come in.
Chair,
Helen, Councillor Tamblyn-Saville.
Thank you. It's just occurred to me that actually perhaps I need to declare an interest here, as obviously having a local business in Bassetlaw and benefited from one of those grants. So it's just occurred to me that maybe I should just flag that up for the sake of transparency. And secondly, if I could, while we're on that note and talking about grants, could I just say that Julie Beresford in particular was absolutely outstanding with the support she offered, and working through discretionary grants as well. I had quite a few residents who were sort of muddling through those, and she was really helpful. So if I could just mention that as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback.
Chairman.
Councillor Presley.
Just to thank all the members that have assisted in the sound centres in Bassetlaw. I couldn't do it because of the problem. I can't walk on that, but I think our members have really gone up to the tree on this one and done a really good job, especially in Retford and Worksop. I know they've done it in ours as well, but I think our members have really done a good job. Can we put that in the report, Chairman?
Thank you, David. Good point. I think we definitely need to minute that. The excellent volunteering done by members.
That's noted, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
John, can I just ask a quick question of the CHPI 001, so the complaints? If I've missed this, I'm sorry, but I think Steve will be able to answer. I'm just wondering whether any of those are likely to fall foul of statutory complaint timelines.
Sorry, just unmuting there, Chair. No, they won't do at this stage. Obviously, if the complaint itself is about a failure of the council to undertake a statutory function, such as say a housing repair, etc., then the relevant head of service would intercept that complaint and be working on that to make sure that that didn't occur. The only issue then is subsequent complaints that would be considered by the or could be subject to consideration by the local government ombudsman, and as you know, we've got a report on that later on. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any further comments or questions on this report? No, thank you. We've got the recommendations there. We're not asking for further action at this point, and members should contact the Policy and Communications Unit should they have any further queries on the performance management COVID-19 data place. Thank you. And now moving on to item 10B, which is the Complaints Annual Report 2019/20, page 45. Back to Steve to outline the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the annual report that the committee receives. Just to remind members that we have a three-stage complaint process that's operated within the council. Stage 1 is where a complaint will be referred to the relevant head of service to investigate and provide a response on that. If the complainant is not happy with that response, they have a right to go to stage 2, when the complaint will be investigated by the chief executive and then provided with a response there. Complainants do have, once they've exhausted a council's complaints process, in most circumstances, there are some exceptions, they have the right to go to the local government ombudsman, and that is subject to a separate report that follows after this one. In terms of the number of complaints we can received, 116 complaints, slightly up on last year, but certainly very much within the range of complaints from previous years, so nothing exceptional there. And I think it needs to be borne in mind when we consider just how many contacts and interactions the council has with customers, that to have that many complaints that go forward, perhaps compared to that huge volume of interactions, gives you a little bit of a feel for really the scale of this, and that fortunately, in the scheme of things, we don't get an awful lot of complaints. I appreciate there are often people who can't be bothered to go through a complaints process, but it is there and it's available to them. You can see the key categories of complaints. I think the slight movement that we've seen in the nature of those, there has been, it's a bit of a conundrum, because you see there's been a slight drop in the total number of complaints about lack of action, but there's been a corresponding increase in complaints about the lack of response and delays. But again, you just have to look at those numbers. So if there are any comments from members, I'll try and deal with those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Comments or questions?
Yes, Chairman. I sent you some questions, Stephen, on these on this report. before the meeting.
Yes, Councillor Plezé, I thought you wished to raise those at the meeting. I mean, I can respond to you separately, but I don't know if you want to raise those with the committee.
Well, the one I think that's important, I think, was the outcomes. There was 116 complaints, and then it's 60 were either upheld or partially upheld. So does that complaint, is that about go with last year, or does it nationally? That was important, Chairman.
It's online with previous years, but there's no benchmarking information in terms of that's now available on sort of complaints upheld between authorities. I mean, we could look into that, but there's nothing further on that one, Chair.
Okay, Chairman.
Thank you, David. Are there any further questions or comments for Steve on this report?
Chair, I did ask this last year. Sorry, Councillor Coulter.
Yeah, Councillor Coulter.
8.2, data collated historically does not give rise to concern regarding service provision or complaint handling with regard to particular groups. I discussed last year, do we have a BME gap with our complaints? In a criticism, if we haven't got it yet, but do we look into if any group complains more than other groups about their service, and especially in light of, if you like, what's going on in the world? If we're not, it's maybe useful to establish if we do have a problem.
If I could respond to that, Chair, yeah, Councillor Coulter is absolutely correct. If there was information to indicate that any particular group was had particular issues that weren't being encountered by other sections of our society, we would have a duty under the Equality Act 2010 to deal with that. So we do keep monitor those issues to see if there is any trend on there. But as the report indicates, that's not the case so far. But we can't be complacent about that, so we do keep an eye on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. If there are no further questions, the recommendations are for us to receive the report for complaints 2019/20 and note the progress and points of interest on a yearly basis. Thank you. And we've now got a related report, 10C, Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman Annual Review 2019/20, page 53 to 59. Again, I hope it's to Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this is once the council's complaints process has been exhausted and the complainant is still not happy, then they normally have the right to go to the Ombudsman. As you can see, in the year 2019/20, there were 13 complaints submitted about the District Council to the Ombudsman. You can see from the comparative information presented in the table at the top of page 54, that's it has declined over the years, so very much in line with the sort of figures that we're looking at, so no real concerns about that. There were actually 16 decisions made within the year by the Ombudsman, in which 2 cases were upheld, and then obviously what the Ombudsman encourages where a case is upheld is that there is some form of local resolution in regard to that, and normally it's the stance of the District Council to go along with that view of the Ombudsman. So we normally have full compliance with that, and then attached to this report is the annual review letter from the Ombudsman, which you can see again that the compliance with the Ombudsman's recommendations there. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Any comments or questions? No. If we look at the recommendations, is to receive the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman Annual Report for Complaints 2019-20 and note the progress points of interest on a yearly basis. Thank you. And next, 10D, Overview and Scrutiny Work Programme 2020/21, page 61 to 74. I'll pass over to Richard Gasby, author of the report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is the standard work programme report that we bring to committee every time, really just tracking what's coming up on the agenda and planning some of the items for scrutiny throughout the municipal year. I think the main point of this report is the two scopes outlined. The first is the children and young people scrutiny topic. The scope is shown at Appendix B on page 69. I don't know if members have got any comments about the scope and whether the committee feels that the scope is appropriate and whether the right questions are being asked, and if members want to add anything to that scope. So I'll just, if I may, open up to the committee just to ask if members are happy with that scope.
Thank you, Richard. So comments or questions? No, Richard, it would appear people are pretty happy with the scope and the questions you've outlined there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just to really say that obviously the questions are for the committee to ask. Members may ask any question to any of the witnesses in the review, not necessarily just these questions, but it's really a sort of starting point for the committee. So the second scope is shown on page 72, I believe, and that looks at the up and coming scrutiny of BPL Leisure Centre, BPL Leisure contracts. That's shown on page 72. Yet again, I don't know if the committee's got any questions about that scope. It's a review that the committee undertake every year, looking at the contract between the council and Barnsley Premier Leisure.
And of course, this is for the next meeting on the 27th of October. Any comments or questions for Richard on this scope?
Just one, Chairman.
Yes,
on the BPL, obviously they haven't been able to open some of the time. Is that impacted on us as a council? Because we get the money from them back to us, don't we? I think that might be something we can ask.
I think it's probably there on the questions, Richard.
Yeah, I believe that's one of the questions in there.
Yeah.
The impacts on budgets
Definitely,
and the losses. What are the costs borne by the council? Question 5. Question 6. What are the costs borne by BPL? So the questions around finance and impacts are in the questioning.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I think that's very helpful, Richard. There's lines of inquiry, and as you said before, members will be able to ask any questions of BPL on the night. Or am I right? Is it Peter Clark who'll be there? It'll Peter Clark rather than BPL themselves.
I believe it will be Peter Clark and colleagues from BPL as previous years, and we'll extend the invite to the cabinet member. I believe that's Councillor Julie Lee and Councillor Sue Shaw as well.
Good. Well, thank you for that. If there are no more comments or questions, we'll move to the recommendations.
Chair.
John, can I just ask on a wider point? Flooding is mentioned under 3.2, and we were supposed to be doing this piece of work before the anniversary of the floods in November.
November, yeah.
Yes, so Chair, we've been having conversations with the Assistant Chief Executive about the flooding review, and we will be asking members who would like to be on a task and finish group, and in November we'll be looking to actually scope that review, what the committee want to get out of that review, and what the outcomes hopefully the committee want to achieve. So we've already started those conversations, and we will take an update to next committee.
Thank you, Richard. So you're going to update us next time on the way forward in a bit more detail?
Yeah.
Thank you for the question.
Chair, if I may, can I just draw the committee's attention to 3.7 in the report, which is the response to the review on cycling.
Yeah.
So the Chief Executive is preparing a report to October Cabinet, I believe. Once overview and scrutiny receives a formal response from Cabinet, the agreed actions will be monitored as we've done with previous reviews. So that's just one to note, really.
Richard, just on that, so we will get an update at the next meeting on the Cabinet response.
Yeah, I'll certainly chase up with the Chief Executive what the timing of that is, but yes, we will hopefully be able to give some report back to the next committee.
Yeah, I've been, as you know, I've been a bit concerned about the delays in that because you know, the government's made funding announcements for cycling improvements, and the county council have plans. So yeah, it'll be interesting to have that response from the cabinet at the next meeting. Thank you. Okay, are there any more comments or questions before I move to recommendations? So the recommendations and report are 6.1, the committee agree the approach to the work programme as set out in the report. 6.2, the committee agree the review scopes at Appendix B and C. And at 6.3, the members are advised to contact the Policy and Communications Unit should they have any queries regarding future meetings. Is anyone against that course of action or wish to abstain? No. The recommendation is carried. Thank you. We now move on to section B, items for discussion in private. Can I please confirm that in accordance with Part 1, Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, after considering the public interest test as set out by the officer in the body of the report, members agree that the following items of business involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 2 and 3, and therefore in accordance with section 100A of the Act, the press and public be excluded from the meeting. Is anyone not in favour of that course of action? No, thank you. At this point, I'd like the caster to stop the live stream,